You can watch it on YouTube very shortly. Okay.
I gotta tell you, you guys have done a lot of work.
Yeah,
I've read a lot of it.
I know one of you corrected my statement that I made that we're gonna get silver. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew we were going for that no matter what. And that's sort of being like and aspirational.
That's right. Well, we're gonna be talking about some of the things we need to get some points on.
So arrows have control that.
These arrows down here.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ones on the right.
So we're back to kind of pick up and delve in a little deeper from where we were when we came to the last meeting, because it was quick. No, I can be. And so what we did was add a little bit more detail to the slide presentation we had before. I'm not going to go through everything that we told you already. But here's where we are now. September 30th, I sent off the draft plan to the DEC. They're looking for certain things, to comply with the grant deliverables and so forth. But whenever they get around to reading it and get it back to us, we'll get it out for public review, and we can make some tweaks at that point. We're already seeing a couple of things we want to tweak, and something might come up tonight. So even if it, some weird thing happens, like they don't pay attention to it in time, and we don't get it adopted by December, what we're going to do in January is we'll really have a plan. You see that we have a plan. So we're going to have an event at Knight Center where it's more like a fair, and we'll roll out all these different action items and tables and people, giving information, gathering more information. So it won't be sort of like, this is the plan, like I'm going to do tonight with Steve. It'll be really digging into the action. So we talked last time about the vision and where all this, this new money is coming from that's enabling this. Nice, great history and working on these things through different programs of the state. The basic layout of the chapters, which is a narrative that really lays out and explains where the issues are and what we hope to do. And then these lists of detailed lists of action items that we can work on through 2030 to get to these greenhouse gas inventory reductions that are outlined here. So again, in the community that we're talking about here is the Nyack Village, the one in the village boundaries where we're, looking at getting those greenhouse gas reductions that we can measure, as well as the government operations measured. But then also this, the larger community, because we can network and, build capacity by paying attention to what's going on with the schools and others outside our boundaries and working together. So we have the 4 focus areas. We now have 4 working groups for each of the focus, we have working groups for the 4. And it's transportation, energy, waste, and natural resources. Steve's now leading the first 2, and I'm leading the other 2. And then I'm also starting the process of developing the whole outreach and education strategy. So what we're going to do now is go through in more detail what these action items are and the priorities.
Before we get to that, I wanted to just spend some time on this slide. These are the forecasts of what we expect, how we expect to get to a 75% reduction in our emissions by 2030. And on the government side, the reductions are in 2 primary areas. One is 100% renewable electric contracts. You all have already done that. The second and a heavier lift is the switching over the gas fleet to electric. You're already on your way to do that. There was some grant money that was received by, from the various state programs, and it's helping to support the purchase of the first electric vehicle. So the plan in order to hit the target is to replace by 2030 all the gas vehicles and 13% of the diesel vehicles. And how did I get 13%? Well, the 13% are the trucks as part of the diesel fleet. The heavier equipment would be much more difficult. And we're not there yet. And we are not projecting like replacing a garbage truck or a backhoe or something like that with electric as part of this. This is all sort of manageable based on the existing technology. On the community side, we have, various actions, and we've translated them on the transportation side to be looking at electric vehicles and vehicle miles reduced, and on the energy side, community choice aggregation and some other areas. And that's what we're going to jump into right now. I will say though that the combined potential emission reductions from everything that's listed here and what you'll see is 80.7%, just about 81%. Our target is 75%. So we have a little breathing room, but we wanted to make sure that the target was attainable. And I think we have that. So moving to the priority focused areas for emissions reductions, transportation's very high. What we mentioned last time is that the bulk of the emissions for the way the DEC wants us to calculate it or is in transportation. But a lot of that is because of the throughway. So when we take the throughway out of the picture, transportation becomes a little bit more reasonable, about 20% of our overall emissions. But it's significant. And we have two target actions, broad actions associated with that. One, they're actually strategies. One is the adoption of electric vehicles in the community. And the second is alternative transportation, public transit, essentially reducing the total vehicle miles traveled. So those are the two sort of strategies to hit our targets. The first one I want to spend a little time on, the electric vehicle adoption, because we are applying for a clean energy communities grant associated with a campaign to get people to buy, to purchase electric vehicles. That campaign can generate upwards of $27,500 in grant money. It's 3 levels. The first $5,000 is to get 5 people who have purchased an electric vehicle. Then it jumps up to, I think, another 20 and then another 40, and you get a total of 70. And if you could get 70 purchases documented, you could get the full 27,500. So that's our target. We want to try to do that so that we could bring some revenue and support the programs that and the various actions.
What's the timeline?
So I'm glad you asked that, because time is really of the essence. There's a limited number of grants, and it's first come, first serve. There are grants available in all 3 levels, and we want to get our application in quickly because the clock doesn't start until the NYSERDA approves the grant. They say there's about a 2-week.
The grant is the scoping.
The scoping plan. The application. So the application is a scoping plan that tells the NYSERDA exactly what we plan on doing, what events we want to run, what partners we have, what kind of actions we're going to be taking in this campaign to get people to purchase electric vehicles.
I think a big thermometer at the gazebo. With each one, we go up to 70.
Well, that's actually there's a good idea because there's no official way of tracking that information. And so it's gonna be an outreach campaign to
It's
get
gonna be
people
telling you that they
to
got.
tell us, and
Yeah.
that's. We know from the DMV data, taking a look at the map, that we have about 70 purchases or registrations of electric vehicles each year. So we know that 70 is very attainable. Finding those individuals and having them report to us, that's the difficult part, and that's part of the campaign. So that campaign, like I said, levels that generate some grant revenue. It's also going to require some advanced funding. And we'd like to work with Andy to try to determine what kind of budget we could kind of use in order to get the word out. A lot of it will be electronic, but there are some things that I think are going to require some funding for marketing materials and things like that. With the hope of generating those revenue. And as Marcy had indicated, we have a transportation working group that met for the first time. And because of the grant, we've decided that this is going to be our first order of priority to really attack this. It's an important aspect of the emission reductions plan, but it generates some revenue, and that's, for me, that's exciting. The second piece, also very important, is to reduce the total vehicle miles traveled. And there are a lot of people in the working group that are really excited about that. We know we have the Riverway, which is, that trail that is proposed to go through Nyack. Projects like that are going to be instrumental in helping with, people finding alternative transportation sources. And if we have the infrastructure in place, then it's easier for people to decide they're going to ride the bike into town rather than take the car. So these are some of the detailed actions associated with those two strategies. So these are the purchase of low emission vehicles. I will note that the campaign to be eligible for those grant funds, it's a purchase of a fully electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid. They're both eligible. And then the second piece is these reduce the vehicle miles traveled, and these are some of the actions associated with those. The second focus area we're going to touch on is the energy in the built environment. So here we have some good news as well. So I think that Joule Energy reported to the mayor based on our CCA or the community choice aggregation where we are, and there's some great news on that front. We had an 86.5% participation in the CCA, which ranks really well compared with other communities. And there is some question about whether the people who have ESCO contracts count toward that number. We're trying to research that. We believe that that's not the case. So those are the individuals that we plan on targeting as part of our effort to get people signed up for renewable energy, either through community choice aggregation or something like that. That's a huge step forward in meeting our requirements.
We're saying, oh no, because now we can't hear you.
I'll project a little higher.
Yeah, please.
So,
Thank you.
but it is cool. That's
Yes, we won't fall asleep on you. We just want you to.
So that's the main focus of our reduction strategy is the CCA, because, anything we do with electrification, for example, if we have clean power and we move somebody to an electric appliance, now that fossil fuel appliance that they were using is now going to be powered by renewable energy. So that's what we mean by when we talk about electrification. So if we could shift people from a gas stove to an induction stove, then you're taking a fossil fuel burning device and replacing it with an electric device and the electric is renewable, well, you've just reduced all your emissions by doing that. And I want to highlight electrification because there's another campaign that we are pursuing for additional grant monies through the same program as I referred to the EVs for the purchase and installation of heat pumps. It's called Clean Heating and Cooling, and it's a program that can generate upwards of $35,000 if you get, I believe it's 50 installations of heat pumps. So the question we're researching is that heating and cooling heat pumps, is it may also include just the installation of a heat pump hot water heater. And if it does, that's an easier
It
lift,
actually is, it's right there in the guidance.
but it says "and" in the guidance. And I don't know whether that "and" means
I have to-
only that or both. So that's why I'm hedging it a little bit. So the so that campaign is very similar to the EV campaign.
So we need two thermometers.
We need two thermometers and maybe a bigger gazebo.
Yeah.
So that is really exciting. Also, the Energy and Built Environment Working Group also met and we want to focus our initial outreach on that campaign to get to try to get those grant funds. And again, those funds are available. Not all the grants have been taken yet, and actually none of the level 2 or 3 monies have been accessed. Some of the level 1. So time is really of the essence. So we're going to turn that around very quickly and get that in. So any installations that happen can go to toward the grant. There we have an easier way to track those installations because we could use the building department's application process, their permitting process, in order to track those, which is going to be much easier to get, some the justification and the documentation in order.
You may be able to do similar because most people that get electric vehicles also install a charger.
They do, but they don't have to.
I know, but that would be one way to at least catch sand.
That's true. That's a good point. It's going to be a very wide net that social media, and the events that we're planning in order to try to get people to report back to us. And also rooftop solar. That's a component of the actions to reduce our emissions. And we used a website from Google called Sunroof. And it gives you a broad outline of the eligible rooftops throughout the village that can sustain solar and make sense. So we use that as a tool to kind of guide the forecasting on what we can expect. We also worked with the building department, and he was great. He provided us with the existing, some of the applications over the last few years to see how many people are applying for rooftop solar, and we use those measures to kind of guide what the forecast is.
Ask you a question.
Sure.
Aside from the rooftops that would be on buildings, hotels, whatever, and single family homes, is that going to be eligible for any of the apartment buildings or condos that might be in the village?
We actually, Marcy and I did meet with a property manager for local property, and they're investigating the solar for themselves.
So I guess, and one of the reasons I'm asking also because I live in a condo, small, 15 units, but wondering if we would be eligible. So I have to look at the list and reach out, or
You could contact me and I could give you some guidance on it.
Okay.
Sure.
It really might have been evaluating when we did the solarized campaign a few years ago.
Right.
There's a lot of trees there. It might not have been eligible, but you definitely should.
reach out and see. Yeah, because I know that we spoke about it a couple of years ago, that possibility. Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions on the transportation and energy side? We did two waste management.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, I have some other Yes, in the presentation, there's also, various actions aligned with the strategies that I just reviewed. So this one is the renewable energy, the building efficiencies, electrifying and high performance in construction, renewable power storage. I didn't really get into that much, and then a couple of others, budget appliances and different practices. So turn your thermostats down.
So on the waste side of it, this isn't sort of a brand new thing. We need to get the recycling numbers up by targeting the people who are not recycling, or, get better practices among recyclers all over. The goal is to get the waste overall down, whatever kind it is. And so the key strategies are reducing food waste through outreach and education about ways to shop better and cook, and store and that sort of thing, but also NIAC, is already doing the food scrap drop off as a satellite location for the Orangetown program. And we're working with, the waste working group has members, including me, of the group Rockland Composters that did the background research and brought that idea to Orangetown, Rockland Green, and continue to do outreach and work with, trying to urge more action throughout the county. Clarkstown just started their program. The ultimate goal is to get curbside pickup of food waste. So this is on the residential side, and we've also started to look into ways to improve on the commercial side. Mentioned increasing recycling rates, by targeted outreach. There are little things that the government can do, or the village can do, and each time the village does something within the buildings here, we can sort of elevate the message and sort of help people understand that the village cares, and so should the village. Reducing and recycling yard waste is sort of overlaps with the natural resources side of it, because there are reasons to keep your yard waste in your yard that are good for the environment, but it also has implications for waste management and the cost associated with that. Reducing paper waste is one that the government can work on in-house already with it, going digital, using 2 sides of paper, that kind of thing. And again, then